Sup everyone, today I'll be showcasing my tournament prep. I had a local tournament a couple days ago and I'd like to show off some of the prep that I've done in the lead up to it. I basically settled on Strike Hayley since Hayley is cut above the rest right now, and I'm using Employee Strike as my restricted card. This wasn't the final list I took to the tournament itself. I made a bunch of changes. See, this is why you should prep for tournaments. You can see the weaknesses and adjust accordingly. But this deck was a modification of Cecilia or Team UK's Dark Web Hayley, which is basically clone chip Hayley. Now, why did I swap the restricted card out? It's pretty simple. I can't be bothered to be a good player. Seriously, I don't like Shaper. If you've seen me in my past tournaments, I've never really played Shaper at top tier tournaments. I love my Count Siphon spam. I love my Disruptive Anarch. Shaper, do not like. I'm not very good at it. So instead of training to become a good Shaper player, I said screw it. I don't have the mental capacity for that. I'm just going to play all these cheap hate cards like Employee Strike so I don't have to worry about these stupid win cons. Now, don't be like me. Many people have the misconception that I'm a good player. I'm not. Maybe if you give me a Count Siphon 2.0, maybe I'll be back one day. But for now, in the Shaper dominant meta, this is not for me, and I really can't play that well. And you'll see that very soon, as we're going to dive into a very interesting match that I'm going to play against a Titan Transnational. Let's go. So we draw our opening hands and mamma mia, look at this beauty, bellissimo. Oh my gosh, Diesel, Short Gamble, Proco, Satcon, wow, Tapworm, everything. I have everything. And my opponent scores a hostile takeover. So game on. Alright, I would like to run Centrals this turn, but my opening hand is just too good to give up. You know, you want to play that Diesel, that Gamble, and get your resources down. So I don't think I need to worry about money this game, but I have to worry about my opponent rushing out behind ice. It is very clear that my opponent is neglecting Centrals and just going pure rush here, which is a problem because I don't have the SMC to deal with whatever unknown ice they might have. I'm going to get a couple more resources down. Especially that fan site. The fan site will really help because my opponent's going to score quickly, and having early fan sites will really help with ShadowNet being able to recur R&D pressure or money to get into remotes. So it's good to get these down, and I also get the Tapworm down running. If you saw my run on HQ, I believe earlier, you saw me access a Trick of Light, so we confirmed that my opponent's on Trick of Light fast advance. Now we have solutions for that, which is another reason why I want to set up those Satcons, and which is why I did not prevent the trashing of Tapworm with the Satcon. You'll notice that I am going to play for a Clot out. I need to slow down my opponent with Clot, and that will allow me to hopefully get the win before they fast advance by purging my Clot. Speaking of slowing down, I forced my opponent to take a huge tempo hit. They spent 2 entire turns purging my Tapworm from the board. That's 6 whole clicks that they could be used to score out a 5-3 or something. So this is very important. Hayley isn't designed to go fast, so an alternative thing you can do is to slow down your opponent. I further slow my opponent by playing the Employee Strike. This forces them to telegraph their Atlas scores. You see in the remote, they have to single advance the Atlas, because if they score it normally as a 3 advance agenda, they won't get the Atlas counter, they won't be able to chain into the Atlas Trick of Light combo. So this allows me to then snag the food in the agenda in the remote. Because I had the Fem in hand, I was able to bypass their Prycon Ice, but unfortunately, this was a ruse. It was not an Atlas, it was a global food. So very unfortunate for me, because I really needed to deny their Atlases, but that was a dud. I could have left it there and it wouldn't have done much harm to me. So I'm gonna just continue now, starting to pressure Central so that they to deny them the Project Atlases, because once they get the Atlas train going, I'm gonna be in some huge trouble, given that I'm not drawing into my SMC anytime soon. I also need to consider the ice. Hand management here. This is a very big problem of this deck compared to the clone chip version. I keep comparing it to the clone chip version again because this is a modification of the clone chip Hayley UK deck. So with clone chip Hayley, you can easily discard one of these programs and say, I can recur them later, no big deal. But here, if I toss a program, it's basically gone. The only way to recur it is with my Scavenge, which I chose as the card to sacrifice, figuring that this game will probably not go long enough for me to require the use of a Scavenge. Note that this deck doesn't run David, it does run Lady instead, so Lady is basically the only Scavenge target, and as well as Fem. My opponent now goes for another, what seems like another Atlas. I again cannot ignore this. But with 2 Prycon Ice there, can I really challenge that remote? I don't think so. I could take a very punishing hit to the face if it is a if it is a firewall. I will be just stop dead cold. There's really not much I can do. So the next best thing I can do here is to set up double fan sight for the agenda score and hope that I can use the double fan sight to my advantage later. Now the Trick of Light comes out and it turns out that's yet another food. That is not an Atlas, so I'm okay with that. Strike is gone, but I do have another copy of Strike in my hand, so that's not the worst deal. But I have to keep in mind that they're on 4 agenda points. A win can easily come very soon. So again, maintaining the strike is important because again, I have no clock threat here. So if they ever pull off a Trick of Light into Project Atlas, without strike up, they would get an agenda counter on the Atlas, putting them at 6 points, able to close out the game with the 7th point by tutoring hostile with Atlas token. We can't have that, so that's why the strike goes up there. So even if this item in the remote is an agenda, it's a Project Atlas, and it probably is, at least they cannot threaten the insta win with the Atlas counter, because strike is up. So here I Maker's Eye because I need to get some sort of central pressure going, given that I'm not going to contest the remote, and I hit an archer, which is very painful. It basically cost me all my bank, every single one of my credits, so thankfully I actually had enough credits to do this. And I access Hotum, I access Prycon, and I access Best Defense. No dice there. But the good news is it did force a hostile takeover from my opponent, so this puts them at fewer points. This is very important because if it really is a Project Atlas in the remote, at least I don't have to worry about the top deck hostile win, given that I cannot really lock down R&D. I'm not going to pay 12 credits every time I run Archer. But they do find another agenda. It's the Oak Town that they somehow, it's in their hand. Maybe I should have checked their hand. But they start scoring it. Can I contest it? No way. Even with the daily cast drip credits, it's not going to happen. So, I draw into Gamble and ShadowNet. And I start thinking about my ShadowNet options. You see me looking in my bin here. What can I use for ShadowNet? The biggest thing I want to use for ShadowNet is actually Scavenge. There will come a point where I'll eventually find my Clot. And the way to keep Clot constantly on the table is to constantly scavenge for it. In addition to the 2 SATCons I have on the board. So that is what I'm looking at as my win con, and then trying to lock down the remote with a pretty good econ engine. So here I'm thinking about how best to achieve that, because don't forget, I still haven't drawn my Clot. Not many cards left in my stack, still no SMC either. So yeah, this is actually a pretty awful draw for me. And the other thing I'm doing here actually is calculating whether I can actually contest the Oaktown remote. Now, I have 3 clicks remaining, so what I can possibly do is drop the ShadowNet, go for a sure gamble, but instead I choose to scavenge the Fem here, because I'm more worried about their outer ice than the inner ice, because the inner ice no longer has 3 advancement counters. So now by doing this scavenge shenanigans with ShadowNet, I can ease my worries about the outer ice, the triple advanced ice, which could be a very deadly Colossus or Firewall. I don't have to worry about that at all, because Fem covers everything. It's even better than a David. I just need to worry about the inner ice, which turns out to be a puny ice wall that I can easily get past. I was just gambling that wasn't a code gate, and I was right. If it were a code gate, it had to be Hotum or Morcelus, and I just doubted that it was. I had to take my chances there, but that was very huge because it gave me 2 more agenda points, putting me at 3, sorry. That was a very exciting turn. I think most people would have been too scared to go for the remote there because of all the nasty things that the triple advanced ice could be, but by using ShadowNet, I was able to mitigate that threat of a painful face check by scavenging my Fem into the right place and punishing my opponent for not recharging their Trick of Light battery. That was the inner ice wall, because I didn't have to worry about the triple advanced ice in the inside. Now I made a huge mistake here. Even though I saw Best Defense as the 3rd card from my Maker's Eye earlier, I forgot that Best Defense on ShadowNet was an option for my opponent. So that turn there, I should have used ShadowNet for something. Maybe it's Maker's Eye, or more likely a gamble to give me the econ advantage to allow me to lock the remote forever. Losing the ShadowNet means that the fan sight in my score area is now completely useless, and now I'm trying to speed out for an instant win by indexing my opponent here. I index to see Fast Track, Audacity, Ice Wall, Cyberdex, Morcelus. No win for me. That is very unfortunate. While I do know that my opponent will not win anytime soon, unless the 1 card in their hand is an agenda, I have to be very worried. Because, yeah, I needed an agenda right now. Also notice that I got an Artman 6 out just to do this because I knew that I had no long-term solution for the Archer. Again, don't run David, and Nanot K is way too expensive to break Archer repeatedly. So devoting an Artman to 6 was probably my answer there, given that I was probably going to try to win off R&D. Now my opponent draws through the lock, or rather they're still locked. They've drawn 3 of the 5 cards from the indexing, and now I continue drawing on. Remembering that they do have a Cyberdex in R&D, but with double SATCon out, I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. I keep in mind that I need an SMC out to threaten Clot here, so let's see what my opponent does here. I'm feeling pretty good here because my opponent cannot fast advance. Their option's completely out, even if they have Trick of Light and Atlas in their hand. They have to worry about my instant speed Clot, so the only way they're gonna get through is to score in the remote, and I pretty much have the remote sealed as long as I can get enough money, which I can because now my opponent is taking the time to dig through R&D. Oh no, they've installed something. Is that the Cyberdex? I think it's the Cyberdex. Let's just leave it there and gain more money so that we can lock down the server when they actually do place something else in there. Alright, passing the turn over to my opponent. They install something and I have to kind of bring the Clot out here, I think. Yes, the moment they advance it once, the Clot comes out, and I'll get a complimentary Guardian Blade for my efforts. Yep, so they can't score this agenda anymore, and I will try to fetch it next turn. I hope I have enough money to get through the remote. I know the Fem Prycon Ice is something I can easily waltz through. The big question mark is the Alter Ice. I hope I have enough money to break that. Colossus is the biggest problem here because it's going to cost my fam a lot of money, so much that I can't afford it in fact. So if it is a Colossus, I'll be forced to give up all my SATCons just to protect myself against Colossus. So I draw a bit, get some money, run. Let's see if it's the Colossus. Alright. My opponent has 9 credits, so if they res a Colossus here, they'll be down to very few credits. Either way, I'm gonna get an agenda out of this, that's for sure. The question is whether it's a Colossus. If it's a Colossus, I'll end my turn tagged. But nope, it's a Hortum. Easy peasy. Just a wee few credits to break along with the Ice Wall, and I can get the wee Jendi in the remote. But what is the wee Jendi? Well, hopefully it's an Atlas. It's a hostile. What a bait. It's just 1 point. Alright. And I'm forced to access the CVS here, which eats up one of my SATCons. But, well, that could have been worse. That could have been Colossus into CVS. That would have been terrible. Anyway, we are in pretty good shape. We're on match point, but we're not out of the woods just yet. While it is certainly possible to lock down the remote, unfortunately my opponent's going for the Purge win. And I had to sack one SATCon, and now they're forcing me to sack another SATCon. So I'm definitely very worried about the fast advance lockdown being closed for me. I start running HQ here in a bid to try to snipe any agendas that they may have drawn into their hand, but given that I indexed quite some time back, most of the hand's cards should be just fast advance tools and ice, and you see a fast track there. I'm very, very worried about that fast track. That can easily open up some shenanigans for fast advance. And we further confirm that my opponent is playing for the fast advance victory when they purged off my last remaining out for the Clot. Again, this would be a perfect time to Shadow Net scavenge for the Clot again, but I lost my Shadow Net to best defense, so now I have to lock down R&D. It's go time. I don't have any R&D pressure cards remaining because I'm supposed to recur them with Shadow Net, but Shadow Net's gone again. So you see, this deck is really relying on Shadow Net. A single best defense easily just hoses all your strategies, and I don't see what I need to see. The single accesses are not pulling for me. I'm gonna repeatedly hit HQ here, but to no avail. I'm starting to get a bit worried. But if there are no agendas on R&D and sweeping HQ doesn't get me anything, they should not be able to score an agenda, right? Right? They're not that rich either. But as you're about to see, they're going to take their turn and money up with hedge fund, putting them in a position where they can easily play for biotic labor into fast track, into audacity or something. And that shenanigans, that fast advance shenanigans is not something I can stop. So I need to repeatedly get accesses here. Beth draws me a useless card. Here's a desperation run on R&D. A single access not gonna prove very useful, especially since, as you're about to see, I'm not gonna hit anything. What now? Wow, how now, brown cow? There is very little I can do. If there are really no agendas in hand, there are no agendas in archives, and R&D turns up blank, there really is not much I can do. Yeah, so How? What? Trick of Light? That is really bad news. Where is Equivocation when you need it? I definitely could use some multi-runs on R&D right now. Draw a bunch of cards because I'm literally nothing better to do here. Gonna run Archives and, well, just confirm they have no agendas in there. Really? I am screwed. They can now fetch agendas from the deck, and you bet it's gonna be the Atlas. Thank goodness I have Employee Strike. One in play and one in hand. That stops my opponent from pulling off any shenanigans with the Atlas token, but they still do get oh wow, what is this? How did they get a 4 advanced Atlas? Oh dear, oh dear. Turns out they had the Atlas in hand all this while, and I've been missing it on the HQ runs. That's it, I should have ran HQ more the last turn, but well, what can you do? I have 1 turn remaining, 1 turn to make this count, because next turn they can simply fetch the winning Atlas with the Atlas token and play Audacity to win. We both knew it was going to be now or never, so I had to run R&D there and hope for the top deck agenda out. This was it. Am I lucky enough? I am. Winner, chicken dinner. So that was a very slim chance of me top decking the Project Atlas at the end there, but even if I did not, I would have played to my other out, or at least what I thought was my other out, which was to trash a bunch of cards from my opponent's HQ such that they wouldn't be able to fire off Audacity on the next turn, because they need at least 3 cards in the hand to play Audacity. Of course, that was not going to happen because, firstly, I would have to trash 2 cards from the hand this way, and secondly, none of the cards in the hand were trashable anyway. So that out was never accessible to me. I was really playing for the roughly 1 in 5 shot of top decking the winning agenda. That was really bad and could have been completely mitigated if I were playing Clone Chip. This is why you play Clone Chip Hayley. It's such a good card. There's a reason why it was put on the most wanted list since its inception. It basically would have locked my opponent hard because my opponent had no way to deal with a Clone Chip installed and a Clot in the bin. They would not be able to get rid of the sacrificial constructs very well from the board. As you saw, their only option to get rid of it besides playing best defense was to purge. And purging doesn't do anything when my Clot's already in the bin. I'm threatening with a Clone Chip at the ready. If they ever try to bait me by advancing any agenda, I simply pop the Clone Chip for the Clot and then steal the agenda. So that would have basically completely shut down their fast advance option. With this half-hearted SatCon plus strike deck, I was able to slow down my opponent just enough to win, but had luck gone the other way, I would not have won because SatCon Clot just isn't enough to slow down even the strongest of Titan decks as we saw here. My opponent had Biotic Labor, they had Audacity, they had Trick of Light, they had all the fast advance tools needed and just simply had to plink away at my Clots. So yeah, well, if you want to be a lousy player like me, go ahead and play Strike Hayley, but really, Clone Chip Hayley is where it's at. Hope that's something you've learned. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching, happy net running, goodbye.